Hi, I'm excited to work with you this next week, and I'm working on grading all the summaries. I've gotten a handful done, and I did all the thesis and outlines, so you have those for your drafts, but the summaries I'm still working on. So when you get those back, I'm going to show you today or tonight how you can look at the feedback from those. And then we are also, in this lecture, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more, just reminders about paragraph strategies, looking also about how some samples that might be helpful for this essay, and then also some reminders about little grammar things and kind of proofreading and stuff like that. So on the body paragraph strategies, I noticed that some of you are doing one separate body paragraph or two separate body paragraphs just about steel. And that's fine, you can do that. Make sure you do have good transitions into those paragraphs so that it shows how they connect to your experiences of stereotype threat. But another option, which I think is nice, is maybe taking one of these. So you could have a topic sentence about something like avoidance, avoiding stereotypes, and to talk about your experience with that and how you avoided conversations or people or situations, and then give an example. And then you could also then say likewise or similarly, Steele in his book shows, you know, how the white student in the all black class, avoided speaking up because of fears of seeming racist, or Brent Staples, changed his behavior in order to make the people around him have less fear. So, whatever the strategies are that you use, there's things in the book that talk about that. Stigmatization is talked about with the supersonics. Actor versus observer perspective, which is really important. Like, have you ever been misjudged because the observer looked at you without having all the information and maybe stereotyped you for that reason? So those are all things that you could do. But so try really hard to get Steele into the body paragraphs. If you feel like you have to have him in a separate one, that's okay. But try to have a good transition that shows the connection between you and him. Next, so this is a lot of text. I normally would never put this all on on a slide, but I want to point out a couple things. So first off, this is set up like the 4 steps of a body paragraph. So I wanted to kind of point out a few ones. Here, this is a student that was talking about issues with eating and stereotypes. So she was saying, when I began to fear what people assumed about my eating habits, I would attempt to starve myself and try crazy diets. And then she gives an example, right, about what happened when she tried to starve herself, because she felt like she didn't want people to think she was overweight for her eating habits. And then she talks about that here in the second paragraph, but then she connects it, right? About only having this carrot, and then she said this could be compared to. That's like saying similarly or likewise, and then she transitions to Steele and the test that they took on the Steele, and then she gives the page number. So here she paraphrased it, she didn't quote it, and she left the page number. Make sure you have to have the page numbers in there for Steele so that we know which section you're referencing. Okay, so that's one example. Here's another one. A student wrote, I again broke down the one big paragraph into 4 steps. So here's the topic sentence: in situations or environments where I'm surrounded in majority by one of my races, I tend to act most like the race in order to fit in. So this person is biracial. And so then they give examples. And then here, when it gets down to this part, which is what I want to focus on the outside, I look white, so that's how people in public see me. This is related to the verbal test Steele describes, where students are tested on their verbal reasoning. So, and then whoops, sorry, go back. So then he explains how that test's results were impacted the behavior, and then he concludes. So that gives you another example that you can look back on the slides and study a little bit if you like how that's set up. Okay, so when you go to look at your summary, you can log into Canvas and you go to the Grades tab, click on that, and then you'll see the assignment. You want to click on the assignment. You could just click on the comments tab under that item, but it'll only show you my end comments. So if you want to click on the assignment, you can look at view feedback, and then you can be able to see what I've said. So I'm going to give you a quick example so that this makes sense. So if you go to grades, and you will only see your own grade, and I'm sorry for doing this real quick, so I'm going to quickly choose Kelvin, and so for instance, like let's say on the introduction, if he clicks on this and sees his introduction here, he could have just clicked on the comments and seen them, but you can click on view feedback, and on view feedback you can see all of my comments, and you can see the editing comments on the side here like that, and that's the preview of the text. And then if you go back, you can also for the summary of the introduction here, just go here and said I agree, and you can go into turn it in where he's turned it in. You can see it from turn it in if you want to look at that and see what the connection is as far as what your percentage is. And then you can also click, just click right here, and let's see. Let me see if I'm finding it here. They moved it, but I guess I didn't put another comment on the side. Otherwise, you would see a comment here as well. So you can see terminal comments, and you can see comments within the page. Okay. All right. So let's go back here and look at this. And the next thing is common mistakes to watch out for. So be careful not to use you or the second person. You always want to say people, they, or them in your slide. So you don't want to say you. And also in the book Whistling Vivaldi by author Claude Steele, some people were saying by author Claude Steele says instead of saying he says. That whole intro isn't a complete sentence. So you have to have a subject. So you have to have a he or the author. And you can use a different verb, but just make sure you keep that up. Capitalization, italics, and quoting matter. The title of the book, Whistling Vivaldi, is in italics. And then make sure you capitalize proper names and the word I. And you have to introduce your quotes, and you have to say something about them and cite them. Okay. And also use academic language. You don't want to say my bad or crazy or whack or cray cray or something. I've seen a lot of these in some of the essays, so be careful. Try to use academic language as much as possible. Okay. All right. So a couple of things just to remember. I've given all these examples about the difference between a phrase and a clause because you want to write complete sentences. Some of you have been writing some run-ons or run-togethers or fragments. So I want you to review these slides and look at the examples of what a phrase is versus a clause, and then what a run-together is or a run-on. And there's different types of run-ons. Some run-ons are two sentences fused together with a comma, and that's called a comma splice. And other times they're two sentences and they're not fused with anything, and that's just a run-on. So you want to make sure you figure out ways to fix them. There's three major ways that we'll look at in a second. So here's examples of fragments. They're either missing a subject, a verb, or a complete thought. And then this little funny fragment here. And then, so the three ways to deal with that run together or run on can also be the three ways to combine your sentences. So you can use coordination, subordination, or a semicolon and a transition word. Coordination, we often talk about fanboys. The words that are there is an acronym for and, nor, but, or, yet, so. And when you put those between two complete sentences with a comma before it, that's okay, and you can do that, and it's a good way to combine your ideas. Subordinators, these are words like before, after, since, when, while, because, although, even though. If you use a sentence, use one of those words at the beginning of a sentence, it creates a clause, and you have to have a comma at the end of the clause, and then a complete sentence after it. And I'm going to give you examples here in just a second. And then finally, with the semicolon, you can use that between two complete sentences and just make sure it has a transition word. So here's some examples. The first one is subordination, right? The when is a subordinator. When I read Steele's research on stereotypes, comma, complete sentence, I begin to reflect on my past struggles with math classes. Second one, you can see it's two complete sentences with one of the fanboys, the so, with a comma before it. And then the last one is a complete sentence and a semicolon, and that says, as a result, I have been reflecting. And then that transitional phrase in between. So hopefully that gives you some ideas. So really make sure before you turn in your final draft that you proofread. Now, I don't want you proofreading per se each other's essays when peer review, but you do want to really work hard to make all your revisions, content, organization things first, and then do the editing. If you spend a lot of time editing little things, then you might end up cutting that sentence and you've wasted your time. So try to really know and own your errors. Like if you really have a hard time with comma splices or with subject-verb agreement, or have a hard time with sentence focus, whatever it is, work on it and try to own it. I will also give you suggestions, and I have tutorials on sentence level work if that's a real struggle for you. Some other proofreading ideas: read aloud, read from the last line to the first, each line separately, cover up the other lines while you're reading. All of those can help you find errors as you're going. So here's a list of suggestions here. Okay, so here is a paragraph. I normally in an in-class setting ask students to try to fix all the errors, and I'm curious, I'm going to read through this and see if you can find the errors. So, like many students, and did you see the spelling error? Students, writers might be tempted to hurry through the editing stage. This impulse is understandable. Now here we just have, that's a complete sentence, and then you just have a comma, which is wrong. So you need to have something else there, a period, a semicolon, or a subordinate or coordinator. It is often a long journey from brainstorming to final draft. Capital W, writers can stumble at the end of this journey, which does not need to be capitalized, much like an overexcited backpacker whose trips. It should be who trips and sprains his or her ankle, or their ankle if you're going to say backpackers, at the end of a long journey. Of course, aside from being over anxious to complete the writing excursion, comma, students or writers, you gotta need a subject there, often don't know what to look for in a final draft. Okay, so hopefully you found some of those as you were reading through it. Okay, lastly is I'm available for conferences. So I don't know if you know how this works. I mean, you can still just call me or email or whatever, but on Canvas, if you go down to conference and you make an appointment with me, you can log in and you and I can be online with me on camera, and we can pull up the slides or your essay and we can talk about it real time. So if you want to have that kind of meeting, it's like coming to an office hour, please just send an email or text and let me know, and I'd be happy to make time for you. Okay, I do teach from 10:30 to 12:50 Monday through Thursday, but otherwise I'm free. All right, so good luck. I'm excited to read your drafts. I'm going to get busy on your summaries, and I'll talk to you soon.